There's little like Secret Service things.
Okay, you are live.
All right, good morning. This is Public Service and Facilities Committee meeting. Sorry, getting closer to the mic. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public has been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, 9 a.m. Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. We're still electing a chair and vice chair. I feel like somebody's
gosh.
not happy with that.
How is that? How is that possible? I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's just every time I'm like, oh, deja vu. It's like Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day.
And roll call. So that's not on here. Mr. Pierce, Mr. Hahn, Mrs. Myers, council people. All right, citizens' comments. Do we have any?
Not unless you want to have all those people that came for public safety.
Yeah, that made me a little bit nervous. There were a lot of people there.
I'm like, what is on the agenda?
Coyotes.
Yeah.
When's that meeting?
At 11.
Don't worry, we won't be here.
So no, we have no citizens.
Okay, thank you. Approval of previous meeting minutes. Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, moving on to old business, discussion of the marina shared parking layout. So I spoke, well, Desiree, Douglas, and I spent a decent amount of time with, was it Mark?
It's on the website as,
You just looked at it.
somebody showed me somewhere, it might be on a different page. It might not be on a calendar, it might be on the public safety page where it
It
showed.
says 9 at some.
It says 9 somewhere, yeah.
So the calendar doesn't say that.
No,
The calendar
that's
doesn't, but I think on the public safety page, when you click to the public safety page, it's on there. It's on there
Okay.
at 9 o'clock or something. Yeah.
Wow, aren't we glad we're not in public safety? Anyway, so we spent a decent amount of time out at the site last week with tape measures and blood, sweat, and tears, and measured it all out and came up with basically in the shared lot last summer, we had 11 on an ideal condition, more likely in the real world setting, 10 trailer spots that were designated for resident trailer parking. And so we were trying to figure out the math to make a like switch. And we figured out that if you leave the the entrance where you would go into the restaurant, because there's basically 3 entrances right now. There's the entrance to the restaurant's employee lot. There's kind of the middle entrance to the shared lot, and then there's the entrance closest to the boat ramp that gets you into the shared lot and the restaurant. So if you keep that as your entrance, you can fit mirroring the marina side, so making it much easier to park a boat. When you come, you drop your boat in the water, you come right out, and you just angle parking in. So the way our measurement was, you can get 10 trailer spots there. They will come to about, what did we measure that? Was it 35 feet? It was like two, if they're going perpendicular, they would go through 2 parking spots into the shared lot.
40 feet.
I think it's
I thought it was
roughly-
like 37.
It's 30, on the marina side, we measured it as like 35 to 37 feet, something like that. So, and then you can take, we'll go past that kind of second entrance. You want me to, we'll let Douglas do his.
Let's see if I can draw it
This is
here.
old.
Yeah.
That's more or less though.
Katie, you're saying from here to here.
Yeah.
35 feet
Yeah,
angled.
but they'll be angled
And then a parallel
going all the
line
way to,
here.
and you end up going to about, probably about where those trees are, right? Yeah, right about
kind of
there.
here.
So their drive, what is the employee parking driveway would shift toward the ditch? And we'd have 10 trailer spots right there.
And it would be pretty tight. Right now, that drawing, as Blair indicated, that's old. It doesn't show the dumpster that is now used by the restaurant, which is right along that area. So it would be, the driveway would be shifted towards that dumpster and essentially the edge of,
The driveway would have
The
to make
driveway.
a little S, a little dog leg.
around the dumpster.
Around the dumpster, but there's a lot of room there, and when you're talking, it's just for employee parking, so it's not, it doesn't really need to be, you're not gonna have customers coming in and out and things like that, so,
Maneuvering around.
yeah. There's actually a lot more room in there than you think, because they've got that, there's construction stuff there right now, and the the restaurant's, like, storage container is in there, which they said they can move, like, up along the dumpster, which would end up kind of taking up there'd be less wasted space. So so then if we did that, if you see those 3 white cars that are all right next to each other, yeah, those spots have signs right now that say restaurant only from, I think, last summer. I want to say that that's 10 or 12 spots right there. So basically what they're saying is 10 trailer spots equals 20 car spots. They're twice the size of a car spot. So if we take 10 spots out of the shared and designate them for trailers, then they would like 20 spots designated for the restaurant. So basically those, however many that is, I feel like it's 12. I feel like I counted 12 once before, where those white cars are. And then and then in the middle, where we have, last year had trailers, 2 or 3 of those designated for the restaurant. And then the rest of that lot would be, well, our 16 resident spots will stay our 16 resident spots, and then the rest of it would be shared, just first come, first serve
Cars.
cars.
So this is in lieu of all these other parking plans we've
Yeah.
been doing?
Well, this is more of because we can't do anything this summer, like it's too late to try to fix pretty up the parking lot, do any sort of significant, grading or anything else. So I
Kind of
think,
in lieu of last summer's MOU,
And
this would be
yes.
this summer's.
and instead of
Temporary
having
arrangement.
to deal with parking attendants and any of that, basically, they say that they'll, monitor their spots with their dock hands and whatnot, and then we'll just, our parking enforcement people will enforce the rules that we set out.
So to boil it down, we're basically taking roughly 10 out of the middle, herringboning them along the side, which I think was consistent with one of the other prior plans.
Kind of the first plan
The
that
f-
Klein drew up.
Yeah,
So
I think
10
most of the plans had that
We've gone
trailer
back to
parking
A.
there.
So
Yeah.
roughly a 10 for 10 in the middle's parking, and if we can get the logistics in and out, and we'll try it for the summer, see how it works on an MOU, and try to get through the summer.
yeah, that's kind of my thinking too, because, we're gonna lose an entrance, exit, whatever, to that shared lot. See how that works, see how it's so hard, for me at least, to conceptualize what things are gonna really look like there when they move, when like all that construction stuff goes away, because it is such a, it's a construction zone right now. So I feel like once all that, if we get through the summer, this will get us through the summer. If we get all that stuff out of there, and then also the way that the new public dock will land onto the corner.
Kind of comes into here.
Yeah, so we can take some of that corner to have as our landing zone / green space. That that'll have to, I mean, again, we're not gonna be able to do any significant landscaping this summer, I don't think. So it'll probably more just be putting out some posts and, just to indicate that this is how you get to the dock. But I think eventually it would be nice to, I mean, there's a pretty good portion, which you can see on here, that's like the green, where it's,
green?
no, yeah, right there. It's technically the restaurant employee parking, but it's about 10 feet where it's too steep, like you couldn't have a car there. And so basically, we'll put, I'm thinking probably something AstroTurf or, something durable, plants, whatever, that we can put there and make that look and stay, because that's where you drop down onto the little boardwalk. So like a curved area that takes up probably 2 or 3 parking spots, and then that green space and maybe a little bit of extra green space. We'll just have to see what it looks like when we get there.
Katie, you were just saying that when this driveway gets shifted this way, there is a dumpster here and a small, it was used by
It's a
Brian.
It's a container. It's like,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
used by Brian previously for his 8 or some amount of employees here.
yeah, that's all
But it becomes
still.
less usable when you shift this driveway. Currently, their container box has been placed in there
Yeah,
by our contractors temporarily, but I think, Katie, what you were saying was the swap would be this space to leave their container there, which typically is somewhere in their employee lot. So it would be, that stays there in exchange for
and we get that
this
corner. And
that would be an
yeah.
entrance to the
Yeah.
new dock.
And I mean, they, even though it is just their employee lot, I mean, I think they would like for this to all look nicer also. So whatever, I think kind of, obviously within reason, whatever it takes to make this area more of a fluid, walkable, accessible green space to the dock. And then, because you've got that, I mean, that boardwalk goes all the way to the dock and then to the restaurant. So I'm sure that, people walk from the restaurant down to the public dock and,
So when we do this, the swap or placing the trailers at an angle coming off of the boat ramp, by our measurements, we think that 3 of the existing boat trailer parking spaces along the middle section of that lot
I think it
will,
was only 2. It's like the driveway and 2, because there's a drive around.
correct, so,
Yeah.
but then a third one would be lost in order to create a loop for vehicles to come in and out.
I don't think we're gonna have a loop.
This
I don't think we
out,
need a loop.
Desiree?
Yeah,
You'll just you'll go in and out. You'll go there and back.
You'll dead end.
Yeah.
into
You'll
the
dead
front
end?
of a trailer. Yeah.
So
Probably. I mean,
not come out somewhere this
Oh,
way so
were
that you
saying
can
a
come
loop
out.
Here. You were saying loop
Correct.
yeah,
out
I feel like if we do that, we're gonna lose
2 more.
a lot of space. But maybe not. I mean, that's another one of those things that once you see how it works in real life, we may end up with a little more space than we think. But
Yeah, I
It's
just,
so
I guess
big.
it is very wide.
it's very wide from, like, when you're parking, bumper in to the residence parking and bumper in to what is now the trailer parking. There's a lot of space. It's almost too wide, like it, I don't
This whole
know.
area.
It would seem like if
It gets
this is pretty full,
unnecessarily
if somebody
wide.
came in here looking for a space, they get to here, there's not a space.
Then they have to back
Maybe they're
out.
Trying to,
They have, yeah,
that, it might require 2 more spaces for looping out.
That's what I'm thinking. I just, yeah, in that scenario, I think it would potentially a mess. Somebody finding themselves here, not knowing where to go and not really having enough space. Because if you think about it, if all of these are full, they're gonna get all the way to this edge. And then here is the other vehicle. There's not enough space for somebody to turn around. So we just have to,
that's gonna, yeah. That, it is a, I mean, it's not necessarily, I mean, it'd be a three-point turn, but it's not like, it's a wide, it's a pretty wide space. And there may also be the possibility of bringing them out, just looking at this, like where that portalette is,
Here,
yeah, bringing them out that way.
Through the trailers?
Well, through, like, into the, I don't know. Oh, yeah, like that. I mean, that'll depend on how they configure the,
I don't think that they, I think their request that for 10 trailer parking spaces, they get 20 vehicle. I don't think, if we have to do that loop, I don't think that there would be enough. Or they would have any remaining spaces in the middle, and the city would just have the 16 spots in that lot.
I say we
Sort of
give it a
high level.
I say we give it a shot for the summer and see what happens. I mean, you're talking every now and then, somebody's gonna have to go get stuck there and back out. I mean, it's not ideal,
Yeah.
but
And then the expectation would be that the trailer parking spaces that would be lined up here would be not shared with the restaurant. So if there's no trailer, it
They're
wouldn't be filled with a
just-
vehicle.
designated trailer,
Resident
resident
only?
only trailer parking. That's it. Yeah. Thoughts?
I think we give it a try. I mean, let's try something. And it seemed like a fair swap for the 10 for 10. It's a relocation, and, yep, logistics in there can be modified, and if they don't end up with their full 20, then, they're the ones suggesting it. So let's just, let's see how it works, and we can always regroup at the end of the season.
So the expense, if there is any, of reconfiguring, I mean, we'll need to probably get some parking stops. We I think we were able to reuse some of these. The expense would be shared between the restaurant and the city. Any expense in terms of signage, getting those parking stops relocated, any posts that would need to be installed.
Is that what their contract calls for? I reread the parts of the contract yesterday, but
I don't think there's a big expense for this, is there?
I
It's
don't
it's
know.
the
I mean,
rope, the ropes and the posts have to go, and
yeah.
those,
And they did not put, I know they did that last time, and they did not put concrete at the base of them, and they're supposedly only a couple feet down, so.
So it's
I don't-
very similar to the MOU from last year. The expense for signage or anything was shared 50/50
that would-
between the city and the restaurant, so I would
I can't imagine they.
advise that we
wanna
do the same.
Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Thoughts?
First time I've seen any of this, so no, not really.
Yeah, I mean, this is just and then, it's kind of moving on to the next.
Do you want to show this, Katie? This is what they provided. I don't know if
So
Blair,
this
this helps you.
I mean, this was kind of the first iteration.
So this is where it says resident trailers, but
But that only fit like, what did we get?
6 or,
7,
yeah.
maybe?
So this would be extended all the way to here.
Yeah.
To try to fit 10 trailer spaces.
So this is something the restaurant did?
That was their first little throw it at the wall. And so the red L is ours anyway. That's the designated resident. And then the shift would be the larger rectangle for resident trailers. The skinny blue rectangle is what was designated restaurant last summer, and so we would keep that there. That's basically, that's the majority of the shift for the giving up the trailers and them getting that.
Yeah, I don't know. It raises more questions in my mind than anything else, because this is an ongoing problem. Does this create a precedent that we're gonna have to deal with in the future. I mean, I thought we had a engineer working out, you know, a parking plan. I don't know. I mean, I have no real comment about it one way or the other.
Well, there we did, and we got real close last year to having an engineered plan in which the biggest problem in this square peg round hole is that employee parking lot in the back. And
No,
if we had gotten this done last year, back when they were the restaurant was willing to give that up, I mean, shift it, but, give up that space, it would have been better for the city. But we couldn't do it, and the restaurant got to experience a summer with that back lot, and now they are having a hard time giving it up. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is that pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. We could have made it happen, and now, I mean, really, they've seen what it's like, and they don't. And so, unless they can shift that space somewhere else on the property, and so that's been the issue with every time we have the engineer draw it up.
How long would this run for? Through Labor Day?
Yes, I mean,
Just Memorial-
it would be up to
basically Memorial
us,
Day to Labor Day kind of thing?
but
It's
I
probably,
would
Or
say,
October 1st,
just
yeah.
two things to keep in mind, maybe irrelevant, but, the city spent about $500,000 to pipe that section of ditch towards the head wall. And I guess we had the hope that we would have a layout that had the city swapping our area to that corner so that we do have access to parking, because I think you could add, based on those drawings from Matt Klein, you could add another row of parking. So we would have, that's just one thing to consider, we won't have access to that area. And I think the city would be giving up, even though this is temporary, giving up the opportunity to charge for parking in the shared lot, which is something that historically the marina operator did, which could be a revenue generating opportunity for the city. But, if this is temporary, then, whether or not it makes the city's case in the future harder to change it, I don't know. That would be a legal question,
Is
but
there anything that precludes us from charging in the shared? If we do this?
the only requirement is that we don't charge for parking in the shared lot after 8, but there's nothing in the lease that requires the city to provide free parking for the restaurant patrons or any person who uses the shared lot.
Isn't this part of the shared lot?
Yes, sir. Currently.
Yeah. I mean, but it's under the lease, under the document, the shared lot runs from here all the way to here.
Correct.
Correct.
It just seems, I don't understand it.
well, what would you suggest?
I don't know, but if the shared lot's a shared lot, then let's share it, let's not say to the restaurant, oh, okay, well, we'll give you a third of the shared lot.
Then we can't designate resident trailers, because that's no longer shared. Resident trailers, that lot, as it sits there today, because the marina lease specifically removed any use by the marina of the shared parking lot. So the only use of that parking lot shared among tenants is the city and the restaurant. The only reason that anybody is parking a boat trailer there is to use the marina, which specifically says in their lease that they have no rights to claim or use any aspect of that lot. So we are taking spots from the shared among the tenants and providing it as parking for the marina.
Well, the share, as I understand it, I haven't looked at the documents, the shared lot is not with all the tenants now because the marina's now been taken out of it. The shared lot's between the city and the restaurant.
Exactly.
Well, then the city ought to be able to share it with the restaurant. That doesn't mean that the city has to give all their share to just the restaurant. I mean, I don't.
No, that,
I
it
thought we
doesn't.
were way down the road and had a,
It absolutely doesn't,
Okay.
but the problem is, by
this-
designating the 10 trailer spots, which is the equivalent of 20 car spots, we are taking that away from shared. We are making it a specific use. It is no longer shared.
well, we,
Yeah, I think conceptually, Blair, what kind of how we envisioned it last year and how we structured it last year is kind of mathematically, we had, whatever it is, 40 spaces that each of us had a right to use. And we're separating that to say, instead of 40 spaces that we each have a right to use, we're going to have, I'm going to have my 20, you're going to have your 20, and that's the way we're sharing it.
And that was
Or div-
applied to all the perimeter, the vehicle parking along the perimeter. And then for the boat trailer in the middle, what we did was, how do we split it in a way that still remains shared? It's dedicated for residents only. And then split during the day when most of the usage for the marina was happening earlier in the day. And then after a certain time, it would be open, when they became available, it would be open to the restaurant. And that way, we maintained the spirit of, that lot being shared.
well, that, I mean, y'all keep saying last year, haven't, in the last 2 months, I've seen a plan that we talked about. And we talked about using the resident trailer park on that side for cars after hours.
Yeah,
I'm just, it's just, this
Yeah,
is
we-
just
and I
out of
think-
left field. It's like, I thought there was a, methodic approach to the problem that had been, 18 months, 2 years worth. And this is just out of left field. That's
We
all.
haven't really gotten a lot of traction on any particular plan that the engineer has done, for whatever reason.
Out of the
So,
50-plus plans.
Well, does that resident trailer area, though, that's going to give us, or give the residents 24-hour access to those, whereas right now, it's a little bit of a mishmash in the.
That's right. I mean, I think there's a-
Isn't
I think
there
there's a-
quick net gain there kind of for the residents on the time of?
It was
of
also, it's a logistical, the idea of having it so that you can have cars at some points and trailers at another point is a logistical nightmare, because you end up having cars that park there and then you can't park trailers there.
yeah,
Or
it's,
you have a trailer that parks where it's not supposed to and you can't tow a trailer, so then that's there forever.
And can residents still park in that yellow box? I
Yes.
think so. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out where do we lose ground? Or do we lose ground?
well, I think Blair is potentially saying the precedent of, what does this establish going forward? I mean, I think that would be
We're looking at a temporary thing, though, does that?
I mean, I don't think it
And Blair, I don't know, does
establishes
the
anything.
temporary
It's got-
agreement?
No, from
Blair,
a
from your-
Sunset
negotiation
provision.
perspective, it's legally no. From a negotiation perspective, certainly it exceeds expectation. We have basically taken the quote shared lot and cut it in half.
I mean, the fact
You
of the
take
matter
yours,
is,
we'll take ours and let's be done with it.
okay,
And maybe that's the best way to go. Maybe we just should just draw a line down the middle of it and be done with all of this.
from a negotiation standpoint, we have nothing to negotiate. They are pretty much fine with it just the way it is. And there's absolutely nothing in the lease that allows us to put trailer parking in there, because that is not shared among the tenants. That is our designating, because that's what we want as a city, trailer parking. So if we don't get an agreement, the restaurant holds the back lot and they hold the lot next to them, and the shared among the tenants is just gonna be shared, and it's probably not gonna have any trailer parking in it.
But we've got trailer parking right now. You're saying status quo is status
Because
quo.
we have trailer parking from the MOU. We do not have, the city does not have the right to have trailer parking in there.
I don't agree with that.
Designated trailer spots.
I think that the concern would be if we designated for residents only, that it stops being unreserved, first come, first serve, which is a requirement of the lease. But it's up to the city to establish what that parking would look like. It's not up to the restaurant. I think as long as that space is still shared, that's really the city's requirement. And if those trailer parking spaces are available to vehicles, when they are available, when they're not being used by trailers, then, they're being shared. And I think that that's where we struggled a lot. What is the definition of shared? Is it 50/50? Is it, what does that mean? There's no definition.
Should we, just for
I
next
mean, we can
steps,
keep fighting this, and we can get an attorney in, or we can try to come up with an agreement, which I really thought that, to me, this makes a lot of sense. It seems pretty simple. It would get us through the summer. We can see how it goes. Or we can keep fighting this, and we can just keep doing this every single time.
Yeah, I think we don't have, I don't think that the restaurant has any desire or urgency to change the status quo. I think that that's pretty clear. We haven't really heard any real feedback on any of the plans that Matt Klein developed. And, we asked Matt Klein to work directly with them to develop a parking plan that they could live with, that they would agree to. That was presented, and we still haven't heard anything from the restaurant. So to me, that is an indication that they're not interested in any new parking layout. And this may be an opportunity.
This is the most recent one.
Jay, probably, I'm not quite
Did that have a
sure.
herringbone?
J is.
Blair?
We got to H.
Blair,
We
does that
got to
have a-
age,
does that have a
maybe
herringbone on it?
H.2.
What?
That herring, I think the herringbone on the outside is on that plan right there.
I don't know what what you mean.
That's getting,
That-
Yeah.
once you kind of get to H, the changes were very minimal.
The
Minimum.
fact of the matter is,
JH,
they're
they're
not
all
willing
very
to,
close to
every
one
one of those has them giving up the employee lot. We gave them the employee lot for 45 years or something ridiculous like that. That was unfortunate. It's theirs, and they don't have to give it up. That's the problem. That lot in the back is the problem. And we had an opportunity to swap it last year, but we didn't. So we're stuck where we are now. And they've realized that every drawing that he draws does not give them the space that they have in that back employee lot, because they can squeeze, because they're back in a little corner, and they can stack a ton of cars back there. And that's what they didn't necessarily realize until they did it, and now they realized it, and they don't want to give it up.
So do we think that, once this project is complete, we plan to, with the city's approval, to accommodate vehicle parking all along this ditch, pretty much up to here. So from here to Waterway would have to be no parking, like it has always been, for the fire department and for the fire station to be able to maneuver. But we believe that from here towards the end, right here where the dumpster is, we can accommodate 40, maybe 40, 45 vehicle spaces, whether they're on an angle or head-in parking. That's going to be substantial. And I think that that's going to benefit both tenants, both the marina operator and the restaurant. And maybe the availability of this parking will reduce the strain on parking for the restaurant, because there's, again, 45 parking spaces more. And we would be in a different position to negotiate a different parking layout when the squeeze or the need for parking essentially is solved.
That's why I keep saying, if we can just get through the summer, I really do think that once this is done and all the construction equipment goes away, it's gonna look very different down there. Like, right now, everything is crowded because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I
It's
agree
all
with-
gonna be
I agree
gone.
with that, so, but then why mess with it? They're happy, fine.
Because
What's
we
the-
can't have the trailer parking in the middle like we did last summer, because that required a parking attendant, and we're not willing to do a parking, I don't, I don't think that Desiree and Douglas wanna deal with, the parking attendant was a nightmare.
I think that we
Not the
believe
attendant, but
there
the
would be
situation.
trailer spaces there, but that they wouldn't be, right now, I don't think that we have a plan that would allow them to be so actively managed, because we don't have an MOU, they are just shared spaces, they're not resident only. I would assume that the tenant has a desire for them to be resident only. We just haven't made that negotiation yet. We haven't made that happen. But yeah, I think you're right. We don't foresee or intend to have a physical attendant on site every weekend. But we don't think that trailer spaces would go away. We think they would be there, but they would be the potential for abuse or somebody getting in there that wasn't, right now they don't have to be a resident without some kind of agreement with the restaurant. And it is a challenging parking space for trailers. We've always kind of dealt with that.
And that's part of the reason all these plans from Matt Klein had the trailer parking spaces essentially mirror what the marina operator did on the other side, just because of ease of maneuverability. And we think there's value in that. I think that the challenge with that is the shared aspect, which in theory it should work, right? In a site that is used by two different uses, they peak at different times. They're needed at different times, that would work. So while this change would provide dedicated resident parking spaces, potentially wasted space in the evenings because it wouldn't be available for residents, for the restaurant tenant, whereas the way that the shared parking operates now, it's used, it's maximized, if you will, when it's necessary. At this point, we're up to trying anything to see what work. Certainly want city's blessing in what we do. And what I do think that the city should continue to push forward is the ability to have a landing place where the new public dock is coming in, which is closer to this employee lot than to the L. Y'all remember this, the old dock had this little kink that came out up to here. Now it's going to go straight in. It's a 16-foot wide pier, so it's a pretty substantial investment. And I think that it would be in the city's best interest and for the community that we, continue to have a conversation and a negotiation with the restaurant to allow the city to really create a sense of arrival right at the entrance to the public dock. If we're not able to effectuate the green space as we had originally contemplated it, that we really, attempt to have a nice entrance to the public dock.
So what do we do now? I mean,
Well, do we get that drawing updated for just kind of what we talked about, even for the MOU, where that does head in right there? I think you were talking about that flip for the spot and bring it to the workshop or what have you, or try to get the restaurant on board with that for the summer. And if it goes forward, great, and if the city and the council isn't going to support it, then we go status quo for the summer. I think those
Yeah,
are
we can try
our
to-
two options. We can,
Pretty much,
can
yes.
you try to get a drawing that shows what we've talked about?
We can try, yeah.
Are you saying status quo as in
no, I'm saying
that
our
for the
fallback
summer?
right now is status quo. So we can just go.
A
with
drawing depicting
what Katie was
you and
talking
I,
about.
what we all mapped out when we were down there.
The one that you showed up there was the restaurant's first attempt, but I
Right.
think what we've talked about is that red's going to extend. It's basically the 10 for 10 swap. And
So
then also,
show this, have an MOU document and a graphic showing this plan.
Not
No,
that.
that-
Well, not this
plan-
one, because we
But
talked
modified, tweaked
about,
slightly.
yeah, just if,
What
and I
we
don't know,
measured
Right.
when we were out there.
Okay.
kind of what everybody's been talking about when you actually met and take a look at what that looks like. And let's try it, let's just pitch it up to council for the summer. It's a temporary MOU. And I think it should be labeled explicitly that this is going to be resident-only trailer parking. It's dedicated to it, and on the inside where the yellow is, just make it clear that the residents can still park there, but it's kind of it's the restaurant's control.
No, it's just a first come, first
For
served.
sure, yeah. So, anyway.
yeah, we can do that.
And then see if it flies, and if it, maybe between now and then we can get with the restaurant and see if that's something they can live with for the summer.
And then also include that the landing area too.
Yeah,
Here.
right. And if it's a
Kinda
yay,
swapping.
No,
for-
for the dock.
Yeah.
Yes, right
Landing
here.
area for the dock.
because
Yeah,
what I'm
that one,
hearing
yeah.
is if we don't eventually come to an agreement on that, then we've got our dock plowing right into the restaurant's
We
parking lot.
have, there's,
Into a boardwalk.
Yeah,
It goes
there'll
to
be
a
a boardwalk,
boardwalk
yeah.
that
Right.
connects.
But it would be nicer if we have the
Yeah.
land, as you said, the receiving
there
area.
there is space, but it's.
And I don't know if this was part of the swap, but the employee parking lot limit, yeah, is there. So I don't know if that is there's
Yeah.
a large blue space shown as employee, so I don't know if that was part of the plan here, that we're letting them expand the employee lot.
Well, that's why I'm saying that this is not the drawing that we want.
Yeah, but do you know if that was part of their,
Well, I mean, that's,
Intention
so
and-
basically,
or was it leaving the employee lot as it is where it
well,
ends at
it's,
that green
in
space?
essence, it's gonna end up, I mean, you're gonna have to take the red
All the way
resident
out.
trailer all the way down,
Yeah.
and then that's gonna be their entrance. There's not gonna be any more parking. That's gonna be the driveway and the resident trailer
And
parking.
potentially the container, their container.
Yeah.
Right.
Behind the
It's
dumpster.
more or less
Yeah.
like in the driveway. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of extra space.
usable.
So what, in our packet, what does this mean? City license areas in red?
That's the agreement that we worked under with the restaurant to do the construction
That's
to that.
just for construction?
Yes, yeah, that was a temporary,
I understand that.
All right, so we'll draw it up. We'll do a draft of an MOU, essentially with what we've discussed, and we'll be presenting that to council next Tuesday.
Okay. All right, so then that leads us to parking fees. Well, I guess the shared parking fees are off the table for now until we get some other sort of situation going on in there. But when it comes down to the right-of-way parking, that 40-ish spots, or more if we can get all the way down to the waterway.
So are these two separate, what we're saying right now, are the marina shared parking charging for that's on
I
the
mean,
shelf?
I think that's shelved.
And that the,
shared
uh,
lot,
and
Well,
then
because
we're-
it's only gonna be available for residents and restaurant,
Right.
so there's no sense in charging for that
Okay.
at this point. Except that,
Well, that could be a request. I mean, the city could charge for parking, even if it's restaurant use. That's
Right.
just a decision that we would be making if we don't want it to, but the entire shared lot, the city has the right to charge anytime before 8 o'clock.
right. So,
So that would need to be decided, if in the MOU, if we want to shelve it, not do it for the season, but I just want to make sure the city understands that that is a right that the city has.
I think it would also be helpful to understand what the potential revenues, and we can just range it, make some assumptions about how many cars and how much we charge and how much would actually be there up until 8 o'clock, because I think that would be helpful.
And then for the right-of-way parking, we had talked about mirroring the fee structure that the marina operator currently has at the marina. So right now, they offer a 1 hour, the first hour is free for residents, and $10, just a flat fee of $10 after that first hour. We've talked with our parking management vendor, and they are looking at different solutions of how to do that. I think the biggest challenge is to communicate to people to be able to get the first hour free. They still have to scan and put in their information, and then, you just don't pay for the first hour. But a lot of people think first hour free, well, I'm not even going to sign up and put my information until hour 2. And that makes it difficult for them to know whether they've already been there an hour or not. But,
Is there some logic that why we wouldn't do the same parking as we did, like, do downtown or anything?
we could, I think, and we can talk to the marina to see if they have intentions of changing it, but I think that making it the same, just makes it simpler, you have the same signage and people are not
People aren't
confused.
shopping around for.
People are not,
Yep.
yeah, you're not
Whatever.
encouraging people to go to one space first and the other.
What is
So-
the, at Front Beach, like, what are the rates on, how
So
does
we
that
charge,
work?
it starts March 1st through October 31st. And that's a decision point for the marina to, if we want to do it seasonal or just year-round. And then we charge Monday through Friday, $10. And weekends, it's $15. Saturday, Sunday,
Is there a
and
max?
holidays.
Is there a max parking time? Or you could
No.
park there forever and pay $15 an hour forever?
Correct. It's enforced from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But in the lots, it's just a flat fee. After 4 o'clock, we do allow people to pay an hourly rate, and that was done a few years ago.
Oh, so it's $15 a day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Or $2.50 an hour.
Or $2.50 an hour after 4.
Which is less than the county.
Correct.
The county's $20 a day.
I think we matched the county unless they just increased
But they're
it.
now at 20 a day.
Huh.
So,
We need to increase.
but, so how do we deal with, at the marina, especially people staying overnight? How do you deal with that? I think that needs to just be folded into the mix.
Correct.
The last MOU that we had last year included no overnight parking. We would include that in the signage, no overnight parking as well. And our parking operator can tow vehicles. I mean, they're going to be
After-
patrolling. I mean,
Like 1 AM?
here's the challenge with that. You have people at the marina, at the restaurant, and if they do leave their, we want them to do the right thing, right?
Sure.
If they're, they shouldn't be driving, we don't want to encourage anybody for fear of their car being towed in the morning to not leave it. So, we would sign in no overnight parking, but I think we would use discretion, at what point do we tow a vehicle? It makes people really angry when it happens, understandably so. So we've dealt with that before. So I think that the parking operator would know, right? Would give some flexibility
Maybe
in the
maybe-
mornings, maybe at noon.
I was gonna say, no overnight parking until, or one night or until
Yeah, yeah,
10 a.m.
Give them
or-
a strike.
Yeah,
Correct,
By
correct.
practice, we would see it
You
there in
get
the
a
morning.
ticket and then you get towed. I mean, I left my car at the Windjammer the other night and I made it up there at 9:15 and I got a ticket. And that's fine though.
Not towed.
And not
It would've been- it
towed,
would've been
yes.
more
A $50
agitated.
ticket was totally fine.
Yeah,
If my
it's-
car hadn't have been there, that would have made me a little upset.
Well, and that's, I think, how we would treat it. We would sign it, and the rule would be no overnight parking, but we would just operationally, have that policy
But
in
maybe
place.
from a rule just to have it so that it is very transparent, the first 24 hours is a ticket, and then the second 24 hours is a tow.
Yeah,
So
and
like
they
if-
use
if
the
you were 12
barnacle
hours
too.
or however, whatever else you want to do, just so that people know that, like, and you don't get people arguing, like, well, I had my car there for one night and,
Yeah.
I just feel like that. I'm sure we're not the only people to have ever
No.
dealt with this. They've probably dealt with it before.
That's
and-
correct.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I imagine if I had left my car at Front Beach for a certain period of time, eventually they would tow it, right? What is
Yeah,
the-
we don't tow in the large lots. They just, you have to make sure that you're paying.
But like on the street?
I don't think as long as people are paying, we don't have.
Okay. Like it's expensive after a while. Like,
Yeah, it does. It gets expensive. But other than somebody parking, blocking a fire hydrant on a loading zone,
You're
we
not gonna
wouldn't
tow.
really tow. So is that what we wanna do? Sort of try to forecast revenue in the shared lodge if the city does charge for parking to everybody except residents, and then
And
same
along the-
thing. And then
yeah.
along the public
I
right
think
of
that
way
would
as
be
well.
very
So
helpful.
I assume that the marina's doing the first hour free because of the store.
It could be.
I'm wondering if there's a way of, like, just so that it would be easier. That seems like, logistically, that seems very hard. I'm wondering if there's a way that it would work easier for us and them. If a certain amount of spots were 1 hour park, I don't know. Like, a lot of times you go to a shopping center and there's 1 hour parking spots. I'm just trying to think, because I feel like it's gonna be really hard for us to enforce, especially because our parking attendants probably aren't gonna be down there, you know.
The other option is just charge for parking and then have a code that the marina store provides.
Can discount, or.
That, that
credit,
you
yeah.
enter into your account and then it deducts the first hour.
Which is kind of a pain too, but, I mean,
But that would be, so, but that's really, like, I mean, that's the biggest challenge, is how do you encourage people to scan it immediately and then, still not get charged for the first hour?
I kind of feel like for the road, the ditch, whatever, we just charge for parking and don't do the first hour free. Because honestly, if somebody's gonna,
Yeah.
it's a pretty long walk to,
Yeah, if you're not
park
gonna-
all the way out there to go,
Yeah.
and grab a sandwich and, I mean, like,
Well, and it'll probably be used, as overflow, when
Right.
the entire marina restaurant is packed, and same thing with operations. I mean, I think that's gonna be the last place that people are gonna park.
yeah.
I would be fine with that.
I feel
Just-
like it just for ease, just have it as a flat.
I think given the technology and like you said, somebody's probably not gonna come back after they do it. Works fine in a parking garage because you have a ticket or you're doing your card and it can register when you're coming in and coming out. We can't do that at these lots.
I just
There's
think
no way
whatever's
there's no way to regulate
The easiest way of
how long
doing
they're
it.
there.
Yes.
Just make it simple.
All right, we'll do that. Thank you.
All right. Playground. So I kind of feel like the way that we ended our last playground equipment discussion was saying it was 300,000 for the equipment, 200 for the rubber mat. And from my recollection, Carrie, please correct me if I'm wrong, it would work to do the equipment, and it might even make sense to do the equipment and mulch it for a year and kind of see how it plays out, see if there's equipment that needs to be moved, changed, whatever, that gives us some flexibility, and then come in after the fact, a year later.
Correct, yeah, we were talking about completing the project over 2 years, basically, playground
Yeah.
equipment in one, surfacing in the second, and the playground equipment being around 300 and the surfacing being around 200. So I've reached out to the playground installers, basically, because they're the ones that would have the, best information of the pros and cons. And so, obviously, the pro of an all-in-one project is the site work, right? It's easier. Once they remove all the playground equipment, heavy equipment can come in to do the grading, the leveling, to have that flat surface for the pour and play. Over 2 years, it gets a little bit more difficult because the equipment's already there, so they're not using the heavy equipment to come in and grade it. They're grading it by hand, using hand levelers, bringing in the gravel if they need to, level it. So that work where it can be done with heavy equipment, with a blank surface, basically turns into grading it around the playground equipment that was just installed, which is obviously going to be an increased cost.
And they indicated that if they do the pour and play after all the equipment's been removed and before it's reinstalled, it's essentially like a 1 or 1.5 day worth of work. If they come afterwards to do it after the new playground equipment is installed, it's more like 2 weeks and a lot of manpower because of all the handwork that would need to happen. So we just wanted to communicate that certainly it could still be faced, but we don't have an estimated cost of what it would, how does all this work would translate to cost, but there certainly would be an increased cost just because of how longer it would take and the
And the
amount
labor.
of, and the labor.
So pour and play then, I was confused on what it is. That's like you form it up like concrete, and you pour it in and then it gels?
Correct, yes, and it ends up as a rubberized, solid surface.
But
We're
it's,
writing,
it's just like pouring a concrete pad then?
correct.
Okay, that explains the,
Right, yes, and so like right now, we have the EWF or the Certified Playground Chip. Doesn't really matter as much if it's level. It's not, we just keep adding more mulch or the playground chip in to level that surface out and to have the safety standard and thickness that we need. So to have that for a year, where the rain and obviously as much as they leveled out before they put the playground equipment in, a year of the
Have to be-
playground chip, they're gonna have to come in and regrade it and re-level it and do all that work,
And just
basically
curious,
by
Carrie,
hand.
why after all these years, now it's better to go the pour and play than what we're doing, just sort of? And I don't know, I mean, it's
Right,
been a while since I've been
you know,
on the
it's a
play.
newer surface. Obviously, like everything over time, things, you know, evolve. The pour and play is gonna be a more friendly ADA surface, you know, for wheelchairs, it's more level. It is, in the playground world, a safer fall surface because it is softer. Just a overall safety certified, it's a higher regulated than the playground chip that we have now. So just like everything else, after time, things evolve and we, you know,
New
new
materials.
materials
yeah.
that develop and
And the durability is, I mean, how long can we expect this pour and play to last?
very good question. I think it lasts 10 to 15 years, 20 years.
And we're re-mulching
So we install
or whatever you want to call
one
it.
to 1 to 2 times a year currently, depending on.
And what does that run, just curious?
Right now, about $8,000 to $10,000.
To mulch that, really?
We had to do it more last year because of the storm.
Right, yeah, so every
Yeah.
year is different, right? The last year, we had to do it probably more than we've done in the past, just because. But again, the same thing, even if we mulch it, it has to be a certain level. And under the swings, it has to be a certain level. Under the slides, it has to be a certain level or reliable. So that's just something that we're always working on to make sure we're meeting those levels. We have our guys out there raking high spots to low spots, you know, so.
It's a higher maintenance, sort of.
Correct.
So I think we have two
So-
options. Based on that information, I think we either do the entire project at once, or we just, you know, decide to move on, you know, continue with the mulch.
Is the footprint going to be the same? Like when we, if,
So, and that would be something that we would look at more in detail. So, you know, we know too, even if we did the pour and play, we're really looking at the pour and play around the new pieces that we put in only, and there would still be mulch in places under swings and around the trees. There's, you know, you just don't want to, you know, rubber around the trees. But it might be the fact that we have grown that playground to include some areas under the trees for picnic tables and for parents to sit in the shade. And not to say that we couldn't keep the picnic tables there in the shade, right? It might be that we do pull those places in, so it would shrink the footprint of the actual playground, but that's gonna be in depth with them and kind of looking at where they need to put the barriers for the pour and play and that.
but the cost estimates we have are to keep it pretty much the same as it
Correct,
is.
yes.
So this will bring the total spending, I think, for the rec center this year to 2.1 million. When you add everything together, can we take a look maybe at the workshop, or what are the out years going to kind of look like? Because I think this would be a pretty peak year if we do this. Just want to make sure that we've got, you know, I know we're looking at funding things, and I still would like to see if there's some kind of an effort we can engage upon to maybe bring up the revenues that are associated with running the rec center. I know, I think we're looking at 200,000 for this year, and 200 against a 2.1 million, and nobody ever expects the gap to close, but I would like to try to see a way, if there's a way that we can start getting creative on generating some additional revenues out there.
And some of those fees have already been increased for this year. There are some programs that won't happen, and that, you know, we won't really get the registration until early next year, and that's in the works as well. Some of the athletics and the camps, but we've already increased a lot of the offerings this year to be more in line with other communities. When we look at the 10-year capital from the record department, the committee and council made a decision to remove really the three biggest expensive initiatives for the rec, which would be the cardio room, the expansion or a new gym, and the covered walkway. So really, I mean, the expense expected for the public, for the recreation, if we don't add anything to the building, it's pretty minimal. It's just maintenance and.
And I think that might help sell it if we can see kind of that, where I think the last couple of years, we've been in heavy investment out there with the
Fitness
additional
courts.
facilities. Yeah, and I think what this would do is we could see it, how it may trail off back to a kind of a normalized run rate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just to kind of summarize so I can make it simple for me. We have to replace the playground equipment, as I understand it. It's falling apart. We got liability issues.
Correct.
So that 300 grand's got to be spent.
That's right.
So
Correct.
all we're talking about is the 200. And if we're spending 15 to 20,000 a year on mulch,
Yeah.
then I think it would be helpful to understand the expected life of the pour and play. And if it's 20 years, we're gonna spend $400,000 on mulch over
Exactly.
20 years. Let's do the pour and play.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes it a simple calculation. I mean, that would be very helpful
Okay.
for council.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, another thought is everything that we're doing in terms of projects and infrastructure investments, we're doing it with the mindset of trying to be as ADA compliant as we can be. Council passed a resolution a few years ago to go above and beyond, and it would be really nice to have the opportunity to incorporate some of this new equipment to be ADA, and I think the mulch would limit our ability to do that.
I look forward to going on the slide myself.
I'll race you.
We'll have a competition.
So we'll have that, we'll try to nail down exactly the useful life of that
Yeah, I
material
think
so that
that'd
we
be
can calculate and
Get
then
cost
present it
benefit,
to the council at the workshop next
And,
Tuesday.
and can it be patched if somebody cuts it? You know,
Correct,
all-
yes.
If you
Yes.
answer those questions for us, that'd be
Yep.
great.
They can be patched.
It can be patched,
Yeah, I've
yes.
seen,
They can even
Seen them do-
remove the equipment when
yeah.
they need to. There's a certain way they would cut it out and then patch it if you have a faulty piece of equipment that would need to be replaced.
And Carrie, if there's a way, maybe even just a ballpark, or talk to somebody about the difference in cost between doing it this year versus doing it next year. I mean, that's new information, and if it's gonna be 20% more to do it next year, then that goes to the,
Yeah.
getting it over the hurdle, yeah.
all right,
It is.
so we're good on that? All right, Planning Commission's recommendation regarding stormwater management. So,
Yep, I'll take
Douglas?
this. So these are coming as a result of a few things, but primarily driven by Davis and Floyd's master drainage plan work. Part of that work included them analyzing our codes and coming up with recommendations of how to improve the code as it relates to stormwater management. Planning Commission kind of mulled those over and could have gone kind of a number of different ways from, I think at the kind of most extreme level, it was having a kind of a staff engineer really kind of calculate and really analyze at a pretty detailed level. Stormwater impacts of houses, and I think they heard and they talked to Davis and Floyd engineers and Thomas and Hutton engineers, and I think the concern there was it would get too cumbersome and expensive and problematic from the property owner's perspective. It was going to complicate that process considerably. So what they've decided on is what the engineers call a black box solution, whereby it's a straight calculation. If you're covering this amount, you would retain a offsetting amount of stormwater retention. That calculation for a 10-year storm is for every square foot of new impervious surface, you have to capture a third of a cubic foot of stormwater. Retain that, eventually it would either make its way into the soil or run off once it exceeds the 10-year storm. So that is the big kind of change here, that it would require at an SR1 and SR2 at a residential level retention of some type to be worked into these stormwater plans. The other things I would say are a little bit more kind of housekeeping and cleanup. One recommendation, another recommendation that's in here is currently the code has a flat line requirement of you can never elevate your lot to more than 1 foot above the road. We have some roads out here that are very, very low, and we have them adjacent to waterways that are tidally influencing those lots. All of the engineers and the Planning Commission felt like putting a brand-new house down at an elevation that could get tidally inundated was not a good thing. So they're keeping that requirement the same, with the exception of saying, okay, in a situation where this requirement would keep you to lower than 7.4 we're going to allow you to go to 7.4, which is still a fairly
That's that
low.
change.
Yeah, that's number two, yes. The other requirements are going to be putting, we currently, our code requires that a stormwater professional be involved. It's pretty light on what they have to certify. Right now, they kind of certify a blanket statement that if you do work in accordance with that plan, it's not going to adversely impact the neighbors. There's no kind of requirement for providing calculations or pre-construction, post-construction type data. They thought that this would, to require that they provide a certification that it's going to mimic or not increase stormwater runoff, would cause them to need to do a little bit more work and detail with modeling to ensure that they're not adversely impacting.
Have we had a lot of
neighbors.
issues on that, Douglas, with people complaining after the construction that they've been, I've heard of
Yes.
a few, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot is a relative term. We probably
We've had
get.
some complaints.
We do have, we do have some.
So this will provide some additional assurance that,
Yeah, I mean, I do think that in cases where we have complaints, we require that the original designer get involved and basically do this amount of work. And they are, before we issue a CO, they are saying, yes, the work that my client did is not adversely impacting the neighbor. The neighbor doesn't always want to hear that or believe that, and this is not going to solve that. I mean, if we have an engineer, which we do have now, saying, yes, my client's work is good, it's not adversely impacting my neighbor, we potentially are going to have that same conundrum with this change, where you have an engineer just at odds with a neighboring property owner. There's not going to be a lot that we can do to change that. We could still have that.
What about the situation where we have, we're now letting them fill more, but because of the tidal inundation or whatever.
Right.
But now you have an engineer that says, oh, that is gonna be problematic, so what then?
So if they fill more,
As if we're saying like, oh, you shouldn't, we don't want you building where it's low. I'm
Yeah, if-
seeing some issues with, oh, I just bought this lot and now I can't fill it because the engineer says that it is going to adversely, because I'm also having a hard time imagining a situation where you have 3 lots right next to each other that are all at the same level, and then the person in the middle builds up.
to 7.4.
to
that-
7.4.
That the engineer is gonna
So-
say that water's not gonna run off onto the neighbor's yards, that's
Well,
kinda
so the
hard to
way that
believe.
would work is, in order to be able to sign that certification, the engineers are telling us that they would have to find basically an offsetting amount of retention. So if you put in 1,000 square feet by 2 feet deep, they're gonna need to find retention that offsets that amount.
And that would be underground.
It could, I
Could
mean, it
be.
could be underground, it
Different
could be
methods, yeah.
on the surface, just a depressed area. So in those kind of most extreme conditions where you have somebody going several feet up, it's gonna be a challenge. Those lots are gonna be challenging to develop because they are gonna have pretty much an offsetting retention area to capture what was captured.
Do we know how many homes or how much of the island, I think we're average, 11 feet or so, but how much of the footprint with existing homes would be impacted by the 7.4? That might be below the 7.4, where if somebody came in, scraped a house, they'd build a lot up. Is that something that,
It's
I don't know if
very-
they looked at, or is it?
It's
is it
very
small?
few.
It's
It's very
okay,
few.
that's good.
The one that comes to mind is there was a subdivision in Forest Trail where a property owner acquired 3 properties.
Built to 5?
Yeah, tore it down, built 5. Those are in that really, really low situation. And our code required that they stay really, really low. That's a good example of one. They are really low. They are immediately adjacent to a myriad of drainage systems that they can get their water to. So that engineer should have been able to find a solution that took that water and went directly into the retention, into our storm drain, and not adversely impacted the neighbors. That's kind of the example that we've scrutinized and looked at and, looked at how we could improve going forward.
So on most roads are 9 to 10 feet, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of a normal, it is, so this would only affect roads less than 6.4, because if your road is at 6.4, you can already go to 7.4. So this is only roads less than 6.4, which is a very small number. The last thing is, right now, pools get calculated in as impervious surfacing for drainage plans, because water doesn't run through the pool, doesn't get into your ground, so they're impervious. But the engineers felt that if your rainwater goes into a pool, that is acting as a retention pond until a certain level, which roughly equates also to kind of a 10-year storm event, where eventually it will overflow. But so those pool surfaces are coming out of the calculation of what triggers a stormwater plan. They're still counted as impervious surfacing, so it doesn't allow you to increase but it doesn't trigger the need for you to do a stormwater management
It'll go
plan.
towards your .3 kind of thing. That .3.
It doesn't, no, you don't get a credit for it. You just don't get,
Penalized.
triggered into having to do a drainage plan if all you're doing is a pool.
Okay.
I would not like to exclude pools from that.
You like the pools being
Yes.
in the calculation?
My pool fills up pretty often. It's not every 10
Not a
years.
10-year storm?
Definitely not. It's
And does it overflow?
probably a couple times a year.
Does it overflow into, because they talked about the typical overflow? I mean,
It-
is that go to your neighbor, or does that?
It's a-
Usually it goes.
It's a very
you mean you
long
don't-
story, but
Don't
eventually,
ask,
as water does flow downhill, yes. I mean,
It comes out to your lot and just kind of
and then it goes wherever it's gonna go. But yeah, I mean, I've seen mine and my neighbors both fill up in the last couple months. So and that's, I don't like.
Over the top?
Yes,
Oh, over the, and
Yeah.
over the top is,
yeah. I mean, that's just me anecdotally, but living in one of these areas, I mean, actually, we're higher, but we have no drainage. So,
yeah.
when it overflows, it doesn't have anywhere to go.
And I will just say, the 10-year storm, I mean, that is an engineering standard,
Yeah.
but we meet the 10-year storm several times every year. And we
Right.
in fact, now meet the 100-year storm pretty much every year now. So that is an engineering standard, but
Yeah.
don't think that that's a pretty intense rainstorm.
Yeah.
But it happens more frequently than every 10 years.
Devil's advocate on all of this. If we're only talking about lots that are lower than 6.5 feet above sea level, rough numbers, if we have a very high tide, those lots are going to be potentially impacted anyway as they sit. If you got a 6.5-foot high lot and you got a 7-foot tide, that lot's gonna be impacted anyway, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
currently, that's correct.
So by
So,
doing,
so just to pause you for 1 second. The elevations that engineers, this gets super deep into a rabbit hole, but the elevations that engineers use are different than tide gauges. You have to add pi, 3.14, to these numbers. Don't ask me why it's 3.14.
Okay.
So a 7.4 lot in the
So-
engineering elevation,
it's 7.8, I mean, it's 10.8.
it's 10.8. So we hit those kind of elevations with tidal water really once every, well, here it's been twice in the last 2 years, but it's not kind of your normal spring tide, but it's
So my point being then, if we do this, are we encouraging people to build in low areas and create drainage issues?
I think there does
That's-
not seem to be any
Stopping
stopping them now. I mean, I think and if anything, they're kind of unknowingly,
Well, do we need to
Because
look
they're
at the reverse of that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the same argument for oceanfront. If you allow people to build seawalls, you're going to encourage people to build in areas that are erosional.
Yeah, these are, I mean,
It's the
from,
exact same thing.
from our standpoint, these are platted,
They're already.
developable lots already. So I would say that the kind of, the horse is out of the barn there, and they're already, and people are buying them, developing them, looking at our code, kind of doing the best they can.
Yeah.
But we're creating a situation where their garage is going to be below a high tide, and, you know, we have had people with cars, you know, totaled. We've had, it's not one that's been recently developed, but he's now on his third vehicle that got totaled under his garage. So from a community standpoint, I don't think there's any disincentive that would get to the buyer to say, okay, I'm not going to develop this lot.
Fair enough. I mean, the mayor's got that issue at his house, really
Yeah.
high tide.
Yeah.
So. All right, thank you.
So are we considering the?
But if the engineer can't sign off on it, then they're stuck building and rolling the dice for, or moving their car out of their garage when it rains, you know, when you have a huge storm or tidal, whatever. I mean, like, I guess I'm anticipating is that we make this change, and then somebody comes in and they want to do this, because, you know, the code says that you can add, but then they get a couple they go to their first engineer and they say, no, I won't sign off on that, and then the second one says that too, then what?
So the code is not telling you have to build to 7.4. The code is saying we will allow you
can.
to go as high as 7.4, but it is coupled with this requirement that your engineer sign off on it. So if you shop around to your engineers and the highest that anybody will sign off on is 6.4, that's what you would have to.
Sure.
And that's kind of puts you in a little bit the boat that you're in today. So it really would unlatch that ability to go higher, a little bit higher, in the event that a engineer can certify and sign off that it's not going to adversely impact your neighbors, and the runoff patterns will mimic pre-construction runoff.
But that's not going to be a condition of the permit. If they want
That
to go
it
as high.
has to be,
Correct.
correct. We wouldn't say you have to be 7.4.
Right.
It's
If you want
can go
to.
as
You can.
high, our code will allow you to go as high as 7.4.
As long as this
As long
other
as you-
condition is met.
And that's not, I mean, you know, we have situations like that in other aspects of the code where you can go as high as 40 feet, but sometimes engineers will say, you know, the wind shear at that, something will keep them from going that high, some other aspect of the code, and it doesn't cause any issues. They just have to comply with the most restrictive aspect of the code, which could be that an engineer sign off on it.
So where do we land on the pool? Are we going to recommend in or out, or out? Your recommendation would be out? Is that something?
I mean, I wouldn't take it out, but that's just, I mean, I'm not an engineer, that's just me anecdotally, just,
I do
and
hear-
I
hear
just,
a lot
and I
about
also think
pool
about,
overflows, yeah.
and I also think about the pool situation on the south end of the island. I feel like we probably shouldn't dig ourselves into any more pool problems.
Yeah, and again, the pool, the inclusion of the pool requirement is solely the trigger for needing to hire a civil engineer. So we have a lot of people, and the square footage is 625 square feet. If your pool is less than 625 square feet, you come in for a permit, you don't have to have a stormwater management plan. On occasion, people will submit a pool request for a 700 square foot pool, 35 by 20. And Matt says, to do this, you have to go hire an engineer, and they kind of scratch their head. And, you know, it's a new layer of permitting for that pool. So that's the only thing that the pool is in there for, is when you have to do this plan. And quite honestly, I don't know that the planning commission felt that passionate about it. I mean, they kind of latched on to the logic of water generally is retained in the pool, only in extreme conditions does it run off. In extreme conditions, it sounds like that's exceeding a 10-year event probably anyway, so kind of all bets are off, even with the other aspects of this pool. Once you're into a major event, you know, the retention aspects of what's included here, none of that's gonna keep water from leaving your site. I mean, you get to a point where, but that's not to say that, again, I don't think it was a strong opinion of the planning commission either way. So if you feel the need to leave it
Explaining
in,
that way, I'm with Katie. Don't exclude the pools.
just leave it in there.
Yeah.
As is.
Because if you're building a bigger pool, get an engineer.
Yeah, that's the,
How do
so,
you- how do you motion that one?
Make sure it works.
so just exclude,
Yeah,
Just take out
Recommend-
excluding pools.
yeah, because it's just, yeah, it's like two words. They just added in excluding pools.
Yep.
So we could just
yeah, not a hard,
not say excluding pools.
But it including pools, just change one letter.
yeah.
Two,
So that you don't have impervious surfaces and people arguing about that.
yeah.
Do you all want to recommend that we discuss this with full council next Tuesday?
Yes, so should we vote on that, or just make a, do we?
I think so, just with this
consideration,
change and with the proposed change, so we'll present that to them on Tuesday.
You want to make a motion?
Motion to vote on the proposed changes to the, or the, well, the,
To recommend to full council.
recommend to full council, the
Planning Commission's
The
recommendation.
planning commission's recommendations with the one change of excluding pools.
Including rather than excluding pools in the calculation.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. You good? I
Yes,
know that was a
ma'am.
terrible motion. So. All right. Okay, that was it. Miscellaneous. Next meeting is Tuesday, June 4th at 9 a.m. Is everyone okay?
Sure.
Yep. Motion to adjourn.
We may, if we don't have any
Sorry.
business, do you all want to keep the meeting in June? For example, the administration committee didn't meet this month. They didn't have any
Like
action
keeping the
items.
meeting on the calendar.
We'll want to keep it? Okay.
I mean, I guess if we don't have anything, can we
We can make the call.
cancel it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If there's nothing,
We'll have the parking lot at the marina.
yeah. it's better.
Hopefully that's settled next week.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
all right, all in favor?